He left me because I gave birth to girls. He went to his mistress for a son. I used to believe love could survive anything. That if you were patient enough, prayerful enough, loyal enough, it would all work out. I was wrong. My name is Ada. I was 24 when I married Jide. He was tall, sweet, the kind of man that made promises like he meant every word. And back then, maybe he did. We were young, madly in love, and full of dreams. He said I was his peace. I called him my protector. Our wedding was small, beautiful, filled with so much hope. My friends said I was lucky Jide was handsome, responsible, from a good family. I was the girl who got it right. The first year was bliss. We held hands everywhere. He made me tea when I had cramps, rubbed my feet after long days. We prayed together. Laughed together. I thought, this is it. This is what forever feels like. When I got pregnant, Jide cried. Actual tears. He kissed my stomach every morning, talked to our baby every night. I didn't know then that his love had conditions. That it came with a silent expectation, a boy. 9 months later, I gave birth to a healthy, beautiful girl. I'll never forget his face. The nurse said, "Congratulations. It's a girl," and something in his eyes just died. He smiled at me, yes. Held the baby, yes. But I knew my husband, and in that moment, something cracked. I brushed it off. She's our first, I told myself. We'll try again. And we did. 2 years later, I had another girl. Jide didn't even show up at the hospital that time. Then came the whispers. From his mother, "You need to pray harder. These girls are too much." From his sister, "There are herbs you can take to correct this." From him, "Maybe we should try something different this time." By the time I got pregnant again, our home was silent. Cold. I'd sleep with my back to him and cry into my pillow. Still, I hoped that the third child would fix it. I gave birth to my third daughter on a rainy Tuesday. The nurses handed her to me, beaming. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "You are enough." Jide didn't visit that day. Or the next. Or the one after that. When I brought my daughter home, he didn't even come to the gate. Just sent the gateman to carry our bags inside. That night, he didn't speak a word to me. I fed the baby alone, rocked her alone, slept alone. I should have known then. That was the beginning of my end. Hard, but I thought it was just a rough patch. A phase. Jide was quiet, distant, and the energy in our home felt like it had been sucked out. I tried to blame it on stress or tiredness. Maybe we weren't in the right headspace after the baby. But the truth hit me slowly, like a bruise that starts out small and ends up all over your body. It started with the comment subtle at first. "Ada, don't you think 3 daughters is enough?" my mother-in-law asked one evening when she came to visit, her gaze lingering on the baby. I smiled through clenched teeth. "They're all God's gifts." But she didn't stop there. "A son would have been a blessing. You should be praying for one now. There's no shame in that." She said it like I was feeling somehow. Like the girls weren't enough to make me worthy of the title of mother. Jide didn't defend me. He didn't comfort me. He didn't even meet my eyes. Instead, he started staying out later and later. Always working. Always busy. And I began to notice the small things: his phone buzzing constantly, his face lighting up when certain people texted him. I knew those people. Friends of his. People I'd never met, and yet, they were always texting him at odd hours. He'd hide his phone when I walked into the room. He'd disappear into the bathroom, taking longer than usual. But what was I supposed to do? Confront him? I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe the man I married, the man I gave everything to, could be hiding something. So, I told myself it was nothing. That I was overthinking. That my insecurities were making me paranoid. But I wasn't stupid. I knew something had changed. And it wasn't just the lack of a son. It was his heart. It wasn't with me anymore. A week later, I found a note in his jacket pocket. A tiny folded piece of paper. The handwriting wasn't his, but I recognized it. It was Sandra's. His longtime friend. I wasn't sure why I didn't burn it then. Maybe it was the hope I was clinging to that the marriage I fought so hard for could still be saved. But instead, I opened it. Let's have a son. He's going to be perfect. Just like you wanted. I should have felt anger, betrayal. I should have screamed. But all I felt was cold. It was as though someone had poured ice water through my veins, freezing everything. I confronted him that night. Jide, are you seeing someone else? He froze, his eyes wide. I wanted to believe his shock was genuine, but I couldn't. What are you talking about? His voice shook, but I saw through it. Sandra. I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The silence between us was deafening. Finally, he spoke. I'm not seeing anyone. I don't know what you want me to say, Ada. Say the truth, I whispered, choking on the words. Are you seeing her? Is that what you want? A son. Is that why you don't love me anymore? The tears that followed were mine, but the weight of his indifference was unbearable. He just nodded. I'll get it right, Ada. You see. I'll bring a son into this house. He didn't look at me when he said it. He didn't look at me at all. The truth was out. My husband was not just distant, he had found someone else. Sandra. The woman he'd been seeing behind my back. I wish I could say I confronted her, demanded an explanation. But I didn't. In my heart, I already knew there was nothing she could say to make the betrayal easier. She wasn't the problem. Jide was. I was just too broken to face her. Jide didn't even try to hide it anymore. He stopped coming home some nights, stayed in the office longer, and when he was there, his phone was always face down, always silent. There was a coldness between us now that even the girls could feel. My oldest, Amora, started asking where Daddy was when she woke up in the mornings. It broke my heart every time. But Jide, he didn't even notice. His focus was on his plans with Sandra. A month later, he came home with a strange look in his eyes. Ada, he said, trying to sound casual, I'm going to spend the weekend at a friend's place. You and the girls will be fine, right? I wanted to scream. To tell him that we were no longer fine, but I held it in. The anger, the hurt, all of it. I didn't want him to see me broken. Instead, I just nodded. Fine. The weekend came, and he left with nothing but a kiss on the cheek. That was the last time he kissed me. A week passed before I found out the truth from a neighbor. She told me that Sandra had moved into the apartment next door to Jide's office building. It felt like a punch in the stomach. I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't. It was everywhere I looked, on social media, in his phone, on his lips. He was smitten. And I, the woman who had given him everything, was nothing but a shadow of the woman he used to love. A month later, I saw her face. It was at the mall, of all places. Sandra was there, holding Jide's hand. They were laughing, looking so comfortable, so natural together. And it hit me like a brick, this woman wasn't just another affair. She was his choice. She was the one he wanted to build a life with. I stood frozen in the aisle, watching them. My heart felt like it was being ripped from my chest. I didn't know whether to scream or cry, so I did neither. I turned and walked away, back to my car, feeling like the world had just pulled the rug from under my feet. Jide texted me that evening. "I'm sorry, Ada, but I can't keep pretending. Sandra is pregnant. She's carrying my son." I couldn't breathe. The world felt like it was collapsing on me. A son. The thing he had wanted all along. The one I couldn't give him, no matter how hard I tried. I sat in my car in the parking lot, hands gripping the steering wheel, tears streaming down my face. I wanted to scream at the universe, at Jide, at Sandra, at everything. But instead, I just sat there. Empty. I knew in that moment that everything was over. The text message was all I needed to know. The final confirmation that the life I thought I had was a lie. Sandra was pregnant, carrying the son Jide had always wanted. I was nothing but a placeholder, a woman who failed to give him what he desired. A failure. It was the kind of pain you couldn't prepare for, no matter how many times you'd warned yourself about the possibility. The days that followed were a blur. Jide moved out, packing his things in silence. There were no arguments, no shouting. Just the sound of his suitcase closing and the door clicking behind him. He didn't even look back. I wanted to say something, anything, to stop him, but my voice failed me. The tears wouldn't stop. My daughters cried, too, but Jide didn't stay long enough to hear them. It wasn't just him leaving that hurt. It was the way he left us. The way he acted like nothing had ever mattered. My girls had seen it all, the empty eyes, the cold goodbye, the absence that followed. The night he left, I sat alone in our empty house, rocking the baby in my arms. I felt completely and utterly abandoned. Like a shadow without form. My heart had been split wide open, and there was no one left to help me stitch it together. Jide's absence left a hole in me that I couldn't fill. He had walked out on his daughters, and in doing so, he walked out on me too. I was supposed to be his partner. The woman who was with him through thick and thin. But now, I was just a woman who had been left behind because I couldn't give him the one thing he wanted, a son. For weeks, it was just me and the girls. We went through the motions, surviving. I kept my head down, worked harder, tried to act like everything was fine for their sake. But I wasn't fine. I wasn't even close. One afternoon, I ran into his mother at the market. She was with a neighbor, gossiping about some church event, when she saw me. I half expected her to walk right past me, to pretend I didn't exist, but instead, she stopped. Her eyes scanned my face, and then she said it. "You should have given him a son, Ada. You failed him." I froze. My body went cold as her words hit me like a slap in the face. The same woman who had smiled at my wedding, who had held my firstborn in her arms, now stood before me, accusing me of failing her son. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her that I gave him everything I could, that I loved him with everything I had. But I just stood there, silent, as the sting of her words cut deep. I tried to walk away, but she called after me. "Jide deserves a son. He deserves better than you." It felt like the final blow. My whole body shook as I walked home. I wanted to collapse, to break down, but I didn't. I couldn't. I had to be strong for my girls. I had to pretend I was okay, even when I was dying inside. That night, when I closed the door behind me, I realized something: Jide wasn't coming back. He was with Sandra. He was building a life with her, a life I could never be a part of. And as much as it hurt, I had to accept it. I had to let him go. But letting go wasn't easy. I loved him. I loved him with all my heart, despite everything. But the truth was, he had already left me long before he physically walked out of the door. He had left me the moment he stopped loving me. And no matter how much I cried, no matter how many times I begged him to stay, I couldn't change it. The days blurred into weeks, then months. I learned to breathe again, even though every inhale felt heavy. My daughters became my world, my sole focus. I had to be strong for them. Every time I thought about Jide, my chest tightened, and I'd push it down, bury it deep, just to get through the day. But then, the phone call came. It was from an unknown number. I hesitated before picking up, unsure of what to expect. My mind raced with 1,000 possibilities. Was it Jide? Was he finally calling to apologize? Or was it someone else, someone with more bad news? I didn't know what I was hoping for anymore. Hello. Is this Mrs. Ada Okoro? The voice on the other end asked. I swallowed. Yes, speaking. This is Dr. Olamide from St. Luke's Hospital. Your husband, Jide Okoro, has been in an accident. He's in critical condition. You need to come immediately. My heart stopped. Everything went quiet. I couldn't breathe. The world tilted beneath me, spinning like a broken record, and for a moment, I couldn't find my legs. I wasn't sure how I got to the hospital. I don't remember much about the drive, except the cold sweat, the tension building in my chest. The thought of Jide, my husband, the father of my children lying in a hospital bed, fighting for his life, made my mind race. But as I stood in the sterile hospital corridor, waiting for news, something inside me changed. I felt nothing. No relief. No sorrow. Just emptiness. When they finally let me into the room, I barely recognized him. Jide, once so strong, so full of life, was now pale, fragile, with tubes running through him. His eyes were closed, and the beeping of the machines around him was the only sound in the room. I stood there, staring at him, my emotions twisted. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to shout all the things I'd kept inside, everything I had held back for so long. But there was no anger in me. There was no love left either. There was just this overwhelming sadness, a sadness I could never have anticipated. I sat down beside him, my hand hovering over his. I wanted to feel something. I wanted to be angry. But the truth was, I wasn't. I was exhausted. I was done. The next few days were a blur of hospital visits, paperwork, and endless questions. I had to make decisions I wasn't prepared for. Jide's condition wasn't improving. He was stable but unconscious, and the doctors weren't sure when if he would wake up. But despite everything, a small part of me hoped he wouldn't. I didn't know if I could bear seeing him wake up and face him with all the pain he had caused. Then came the phone call from Sandra. Is he going to make it? She asked, her voice flat, like she was just checking in on a friend's pet. He's going to wake up, right? He has to. We have a son on the way, Ada. The mention of her son, of Jide's son, made my blood run cold. I didn't know what to say. How could I? What could I say to a woman who had done this to me? The woman who took my husband and now my family's future. I just hung up. Jide wasn't the man I married anymore. And I realized then, more than ever, that I didn't want him back. I didn't want a man who could walk out on me, on his daughters, and then expect me to rush to his side when life got difficult. The truth was, I had been holding on to a man who had already left me a long time ago. The doctor came in later that afternoon with some news. We don't know when he'll wake up, but his condition has stabilized. He may never fully recover, Mrs. Okoro. The road ahead is uncertain. I nodded, feeling nothing. It was all too much. I couldn't do this anymore. And then, Sandra came to see him. She stood by the door, her eyes fixed on Jide, and for the first time, I saw the truth in her eyes. She wasn't here because she loved him, no, she was here because she had something to gain. She had the son Jide had wanted. She had the life he had promised me. She had won. I left that hospital room without a second glance. I walked out into the world, and for the first time, I felt free. I left the hospital that day and didn't look back. It was strange, the way I felt walking away from Jide. At first, I had expected some sort of relief, some sense of closure, but all I could feel was numbness. The truth had settled in like a weight, and there was no lifting it. When I returned home, it was just me and my girls, the three of us trying to rebuild. It wasn't easy. The house felt too big without Jide in it. His absence echoed in every room. The silence screamed louder than any argument ever had. But I had to find a way forward. I had to be strong for them. That night, as I tucked Amora and Titi into bed, I realized something. This wasn't about Jide anymore. It never had been. This was about me, my daughters, and our future. I could continue being the woman who had been left behind, or I could choose to become something more. Something stronger. I woke up the next morning, not to the sound of Jide's footsteps or his voice calling me from the kitchen, but to the soft sounds of my girls laughing in their room. They were okay. They were happy. And that was enough. I knew what I had to do. The next week, I enrolled in an adult education program. I had never finished my degree. I had put it on hold when Jide and I started our family. But now, I had a new goal, one that had nothing to do with Jide or Sandra. I was going to finish my degree. I was going to build a life for my girls, with or without him. I didn't tell anyone at first. I didn't want to talk about it, not yet. I wasn't doing this for anyone else. I was doing it for me, for my daughters, for the future we would have. But when I finally mentioned it to my sister, Ngozi, she was surprised. Ada, this is amazing, she said, hugging me tightly. You've been through so much. You deserve this. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until I did. Sometimes, in the midst of pain and grief, we forget that we can still move forward. We forget that there is still life waiting for us, even after the worst has happened. The days after that were hard, no doubt. There were moments when I wanted to quit, when I felt like giving up on everything. The pressure of school, of being a single mother, of facing a world that seemed so indifferent to my struggles, it all piled on top of me. But every time I looked at my girls, I found the strength to keep going. Months passed, and I started to feel a shift. It wasn't instant, and it wasn't easy, but slowly, I started to feel like me again. The woman who had been lost for so long. The woman who had been so caught up in trying to make a broken marriage work that she forgot who she was. One evening, as I sat at my kitchen table, studying for an exam, Amora came to me, holding her school report. Look, Mama. I got an A in math, she exclaimed, her face beaming with pride. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. I'm so proud of you, my love, I said, pulling her into a hug. You're going to do amazing things. And I realized, in that moment, that I was doing amazing things too. I wasn't where I wanted to be yet, but I was moving forward. And that was enough. A year had passed. A year of growth, pain, and rebuilding. A year of realizing that I didn't need Jide to be whole. I didn't need Sandra's approval. I didn't need anyone's validation. I had found my own strength, my own purpose. It wasn't easy, no part of this journey had been. But every day, I had woken up with a renewed sense of purpose, driven by the love I had for my daughters and the dreams I had for us. Slowly but surely, I was learning to live for myself again. One evening, while I was studying at my desk, there was a knock at the door. It was unexpected, and as I stood up to answer it, my heart skipped a beat. I didn't know who it could be. My mind raced through all the possibilities until I opened the door and saw him. Jide. He stood there, looking almost unrecognizable. He was thinner, his face lined with exhaustion, and his eyes, those eyes that once held so much warmth for me, were hollow. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, like he didn't know what to say. I didn't invite him in. I just looked at him, silent, waiting. I just wanted to see you, he said, his voice broken. I know I've hurt you, Ada. I know I've done things that can never be undone, but I'm trying to fix myself. I held up a hand to stop him. I couldn't let him finish. I couldn't listen to his excuses. Not anymore. Jide, I said, my voice steady, though my heart was pounding. You left us. You left me. You left our daughters for her. And now, you want to come back. He opened his mouth to speak, but I wasn't finished. I spent so many nights wondering what went wrong, I continued, my voice growing stronger. I spent so many nights trying to fix something that wasn't even worth fixing. You walked away from me. You walked away from everything we built together. And for what? A son you thought would make you happy. A woman you thought would make you complete. Tears welled in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I don't need you, Jide. I'm not the same woman I was when you left. I've built something better for my girls and me. I'm not going to go backwards. Not for you, not for anyone. He stood there, his face twisted in regret. His mouth opened and closed, like he wanted to say something, but the words never came. He finally hung his head, defeated. I'm sorry, he whispered. I was wrong. I've hurt you, and I've hurt the girls. I don't know if I can ever make it right. But I just wanted to try. I took a deep breath, my chest tight. This was the moment. The moment where I had to let go completely, once and for all. And I did. I appreciate your apology, I said, my voice calm but firm. But this is where our story ends. You had your chance, and you chose someone else. Now, I'm choosing us. My daughters and me. He nodded slowly, his face crumpling as he turned away, walking down the path that had once been ours. And just like that, he was gone again. I stood there for a long time, watching him leave. It felt strange, like a weight had been lifted, but there was still something lingering in the air, something unresolved. And yet, I knew I had made the right choice. The door closed behind me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt peace. True peace. In the months that followed, life didn't get easier, but it became clearer. I continued my studies and began to take on work that challenged me, work that reminded me of who I was before everything fell apart. My daughters thrived. They grew stronger, more confident, and I couldn't have been prouder. Jide's absence was no longer a wound that bled. It was a scar, a reminder of what I had survived and who I had become. I was no longer the woman who clung to a love that was never meant to last. I was the woman who had fought for herself and her daughters, who had stood tall in the face of abandonment, and who had learned that the best thing she could ever give her children was her own strength. The past would always be a part of me, but it no longer defined me. I had found my new beginning. And this time, it was mine alone to write.